so excited for Thailand. Oh
I
my
know.
God.
I'm so excited. We have to book our Phuket excursions, but that's the last thing. Everyone was giving me shit for booking the fucking Phuket to Bangkok flight tickets and like farming the points.
Wait,
Oh,
when
I
you
don't
did
give a
that, I was
fuck.
like, that was so nice of
I
her
also
that she
thought
like
that.
put in everyone's info and then booked everyone's flight.
Wait,
and
I
also
actually
like
thought that was
and
so
I was
nice
like,
of you.
also if everyone did it, like one person would have fucked it up.
Yeah.
100%.
Which I was like, yeah, there's no point in like letting them book this thing. Like, cause
Wait, I mean, I'm sure they were joking. Wait, I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
wait,
I
when you
was, like,
booked that,
kind of
I was like,
impressed.
wait, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it. Welcome back to the check. I'm Maya.
How did we get there? How did we get there? Oh my God.
Okay. Welcome back to Get the Check. I'm Maya.
I'm Annika.
I'm Priya.
And today we're going to be talking about 3 stories. The first is Trump's recent fiasco with the Fed. So if you didn't know, he fired Lisa Cook, which is someone from the Fed Board of Governors. And we're going to be talking about 1, what this firing means, 2, what might happen if this gets escalated to the Supreme Court, and 3, what it means for the Fed to be independent from the executive branch and why the government is structured that way. The second story that we're going to be talking about is Open Evidence. Open Evidence is a platform where physicians like doctors can input what's happening with a patient and maybe see if there's any like peer-reviewed medical study out there of what to do next. It's basically like an AI chatbot, but for healthcare specifically. And we're going to be going into the business model and how the company was founded in the first place. And finally, we're going to be going into SpaceX's last 2 missions, which is Starship Flight 10 and Starlink 17-7 mission. The biggest thing here is that they wanted the booster and the Starship upper stage to survive and be reused for the next mission. Okay.
We got through it.
We got through it. That was a lot.
Yeah. So starting with the Fed, a quick timeline of events to like where we got today. Trump fired Lisa Cook for mortgage fraud. And essentially what this mortgage fraud was that she had 2 primary residences. And when you get a mortgage, you get a better rate if it's your primary residence as opposed to like a vacation property or something, or investment property or something like that. And so basically he fired her for that, which you're not allowed to really do because you have to have cause, which we'll get into later. But then after that, because she didn't think that was fair, Lisa Cook sued the Trump administration, and that resulted in an emergency hearing last Friday. There was no ruling that came out of it, and basically she's still a current member of the Fed's Board of Governors, and so they are supposed to come back with like more evidence, which is what was asked of them on Tuesday. So I guess this episode will be out by then. But yeah, that's basically like the TLDR of where we're at in terms of like the timeline right now.
So yeah, in August 2025, Bill Pulte, which is a Trump-aligned agency director, accused Cook of using 2 homes as her principal residence to obtain better mortgage terms. This is like occupancy fraud. And the thing going into the case or the suing is what is like grounds for termination, what is cause. The thing that they're going to be judging is how much control does the president have over like firing different members of agencies. Humphrey's executor in 1935 is an act that protects independent agencies from political meddling. So it's really like, will this act hold up in Supreme Court?
The for cause thing is really interesting because it's never been tried before. And generally, like, we understand that to be like neglect of your job or your duty or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And so something like mortgage fraud seems to fall pretty outside of that and like does not seem like it aligns with like what for cause is supposed to mean.
I think the other issue is like the series of events. So I think like if she independently had been charged with like mortgage fraud or like some sort of like criminal thing, and then Trump brought up like, oh, okay, because she has these charges that happen independently, we don't think she's like fit to serve in office, then like maybe. It's ironic because Trump has like the most amount of criminal charges against him and like he's still in office. But the like Bill Pulte guy that Maya was talking about was this like big Twitter personality, and then he's been like heading up the Federal Housing Finance Agency under Trump. But Lisa Cook isn't the only person he's targeted. He's also targeted Democratic Senator Adam Schiff, and then also New York Attorney General Tish James. And Tish James is also a Black woman, which like there is no proof technically that this is like racially motivated, but like 2 out of the 3 people.
But it's not a good look.
Yeah, it's just like 2 out of the 3 people are like Black women, and like it is not normal for the person in that agency to like dig up like basically like opposition information on people in the government. At the same time, like it's not really a good look on Lisa Cook either, because it seems like they did find something, but it's also like weird to like go looking, I guess.
Well, it's been known that Trump is going to is looking for things. He's like openly said that he doesn't agree with like Powell's actions. So when we know that he's trying to figure out a way to undermine Powell's position, which I don't know if this is dumb to say, but I found out that he appointed Powell in the first place in 2017.
He appointed Powell in his first term.
But yeah, in early 2020.
No, it is surprising considering like how much he hates him.
Yeah.
No, it is.
It is. But recently he fired, I think it's Gwen Wilcox, which is a member of the National Labor Relations Board, and Kathy Harris from the Merit Systems Protection Board. And those are both independent agencies that should have been covered by that previous act, Humphrey's executor. And so the Supreme Court issued an emergency order in 2025 letting these firings like stand essentially. And it was a 6-3 decision, which was like along ideological line. And what they did, though, was they distinguished that the Federal Reserve was different than like the NLRB and MSPB, because at that time, Trump and Powell were publicly fighting. So they specifically distinguished the Federal Reserve apart, saying that it was uniquely structured and quasi-private because the Fed should retain like stronger independence since it like, stems from like the first and second bank of the United States.
Yeah. I mean, the Fed operates independently. Like that's like one of the core reasons that it exists, and is so that it's not influenced by any politics or anything like that. And it was designed by Congress to be insulated from any of these types of things that are going on in the government, like whoever the president might be.
And the Fed's actually not taking a perspective on this whole Lisa Cook thing, which I think is interesting. It's actually her private attorneys that are suing the Trump administration and are technically also suing Jerome Powell. Why they're suing Jerome Powell and the Fed as well is they're saying that in the interim, until like the Trump v. Lisa Cook's thing is decided, she shouldn't lose her job. And Jerome Powell was like, we'll just do whatever like the courts decide. So he's staying very apolitical, which is like pretty par for the course with him.
Yeah.
But we can go more into like the previous history of like Trump and the Fed, because Polt, the guy that found the stuff on Lisa Cook, also was the one that drafted like a letter for Trump to fire Powell when he was going to. And the only reason why Trump apparently hasn't fired Powell is because people think like the markets would go into free fall. But for example, like this whole Lisa Cook thing, like a lot of economists and like analysts thought that that would negatively impact the market, but it had like no effect.
So the reason why the financial markets would react to it is because the Fed is independent. And if the Fed isn't independent and political power can now determine like what the interest rates are, then that leads to like less stability in the US dollar. Right now, US dollar is like the primary global currency. And so what people have been tracking is the 30-year bond rate. Right now, investors buy these bonds as a safe store for value. And so if you look at the interest rate for those bonds, it's basically commenting on how like safe they think monetary policy of the US will be over like the next 30 years. Yeah. If they think that the Fed is politically compromised and allows inflation to soar, essentially, people believe that their rates will go up. And so you can see how the 30-year bond rate changes like over time to see how people are thinking about whether or not the Fed is like doing well.
Like doing its job, basically.
Like, doing its job. And so the bond market's calmness suggests either investors are optimistic that like Trump won't get his way, or they have not priced in the risks just yet. But I think it's the first.
Yeah, I think it's the first too. I feel like the market always reacts to everything immediately or like before it even happens. So
the reason why it matters is because monetary policy is voted on by 12 people, 7 of which are the board of governors, and then 5 of which are like rotating members of like the regional banks. And
it's 4 members that are rotating and then 1 that's the president of the New York Fed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The split was 5 Biden appointees and 2 Trump appointees. So they were like really in the minority. But then one of Biden's appointees stepped down, which she says is for personal reasons. And then another one of them, which is Lisa Cook, just got fired. And so theoretically, if both of those get replaced, then it's 3-4 and Trump has the majority. And he's already said like on tape that like he expects to have the majority after the Lisa Cook firing goes through, and that he is going to push through like the interest rate cuts that he wants.
Yeah, he was literally announcing it at his like cabinet meeting on Tuesday, the day after. Yeah, like he already claimed victory on this.
Yeah. And it's kind of insane. Like he's not even like trying to pretend like I don't want someone that's like done illegal things like this mortgage stuff. Like she's like a crook or something. He's going to start calling her Lisa Crook or something. he's just like, yeah, I want interest rates to change.
Yeah. And it's funny because like the conversation around this is that like the Democratic side is that this is a breach of our democracy, and then the Trump and MAGA side are saying, okay, the current system is like undemocratic and it's like servicing elite interests, because they're like commenting on the fact that like Cook is like doing this like to home thing and like getting around the law, and like she should be held to like a higher standard or whatever. And I read this Substack by Adam Tooze, and he essentially argues that the current Fed, like the way it's made up is that they're all like appointed by the president, and then you have like you have the board of governors, and then you have 12 regional chairs. Those influence local monetary policy and are not directly elected by the people of that area. And so they're basically a bunch of technocrats, or like essentially like very highly skilled, intelligent people that are not elected, which is good and bad. Good in a sense of like it's not like a popularity contest and you don't have to like say all these things to win, but bad because there's no like transparency, and as a person of a democratic nation you have no like influence to do that. And so essentially he's commenting on like the fact that the way the Fed Reserve is like built today isn't necessarily inherently like very democratic at all. And so like when people say preserve our democracy, it's like, well, this thing is not very.
Yeah, no,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I kind of like disagree. Like I get
that's what I was gonna say too.
I get the point. Like, but it's like in a democracy, everything is not 100% democratic. Like the fact that then you can say like the fact that that Congress votes on bills isn't democratic. Like it's not a proposition that goes to direct vote. And I think everyone agrees like to have a functioning modern democracy, there's parts of the process that are undemocratic. And I'm not saying we shouldn't like critique those, but like specifically with the Fed, like regional bank chairs, like I worked for the Minneapolis Fed like regional bank chair when I was in college, like Neil Kashkari, he's actually Kashmiri. But like these people are super intelligent, but like the people I was working with at the Fed are mostly like tenured professors and like economists that have spent like their entire life in the books. And I just like don't see those people being good at running an election. And I wouldn't honestly want them to have to be focused on running an election. Like I don't think and I'm not really deep in the literature, so maybe there's like an argument for some of these people to be like, I don't know, appointed by popular vote or something. But like that whole conversation to me is unrelated to the fact that Trump clearly just tries to undermine like checks and balances with powerful institutions in this country that are like here for a reason. Like if Trump wanted to say like, oh, I actually think that the regional bank chair should be put up to popular vote because of XYZ reason, I'm gonna like introduce it into Congress or something. That's like a different conversation than like firing someone.
Yeah, I think it's like the general just like spirit of what the Fed like stands for more than anything else, because like there's always things to critique with like any government organization and the way that things are run, especially in the United States. But I think like the spirit of the Fed is that it's an independent party that's not influenced by politics, and like whether it's the regional chairs like the ones that you were just talking about, or if it's the people that are appointed, their goal is to do what's in the best interest for the country.
Yeah, I think his comment is not necessarily taking a side. It's more just explaining like that the current system is vulnerable to political attack, and that if like we actually wanted to protect our democracy or whatever, it's like what are the systems that we can put into place to make sure that like a leader of power can't do something like this.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I was actually thinking about it where it's like a lot of things in politics are basically just like assuming that everyone is going to abide by like the general rules.
And like building a perfect system is like very hard.
Yeah, but it's like also like a lot of things rest on the fact that like you kind of assume the president is like someone that's
generally has the best interest of the people that you're like governing.
And so then like for example, like the fact that it's like, oh, the president can fire someone at cause, like I kind of agree. Like I see Trump's point, like what does that cause mean? Like if he can prove she did something illegal, like how is that not a cause? And there's like legal experts that are going to spend their entire, I don't know, it's going to go to the Supreme Court. So like they're going to decide based on a bunch of past precedent, but obviously like that could have been better written.
Yeah, that's for sure true. And like we have seen this happen in other countries before, and honestly in the US as well. But the example I wanted to point to was in the UK pre-1997, where basically monetary policy in the UK was set by this chancellor, but the chancellor just reported to the prime minister, so it was essentially just reporting to the government. And it created this cycle. Any prime minister or president, like their ultimate goal is that they want to get reelected into office. And so because there was influence of politics on monetary policy right before any election in the UK, they would basically cut rates to increase growth, which would just like stimulate the economy, and like everything would seem to be doing super well and grow. But then right after, soon after the election or whatever it was, it would lead to insane inflation. And so there were these crazy cycles that we were seeing in the UK, and the same party stayed in power for, I think it was like 18 years or something like that. And so no one ever changed anything because they kept winning. And so in the 70s and 80s, inflation was super volatile in the UK. Like at times went up into like the 20% or something like that. It was crazy. And then in 1997, the Labour Party won. And basically the chancellor was like, the Bank of England needs to be separate from the government, and they need to be like independent parties because it's so dangerous to fall into this political business cycle. And we've seen it happen before in the UK where you literally just cut rates, the market goes up, it leads to inflation, and then it just like is really painful for everyone else in the country.
Like the boom and bust cycle.
Yeah.
And we've seen, there was a study done with 370 central bank reforms from 1923 to 2023 to see like across the entire world of like different countries. And they found that there was like a renewed global commitment to central bank independence since 2016. So like in the third world and second world countries are generally moving towards this practice of federal bank independence.
Yeah.
So it's like a widely accepted standard.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that in the United States for a reason. Yeah. And we can get into like why Trump cares so much about it, because I think in the example we just gave, it was more on an election front. In the current scenario that we're in, a lot of it is just tariffs and how he wants the economy to look under him.
Yeah. So basically tariffs are going to lead to higher inflation because the cost of goods increasing gets passed down to the consumer. And it can also lead to like unemployment because businesses are not able to like hire as much in those conditions. And there's just like uncertainty. Yeah. But if Powell was to cut rates, which is what Trump keeps asking him to do, then people are going to like borrow more money. They're going to spend more. And that is going to basically
lead to more inflation.
Yeah. But it'll seem like his tariffs are fine because everyone's so concerned about the tariffs that Trump put in place. And so if he can correlate the two of like the economy and market doing better, but his tariffs also being in place at the same time, then it like follows his narrative.
But then like I guess both those things are just going to increase inflation. So then it'll just be like doubly increased, which I guess is why Powell doesn't want to do it.
Well, so the Fed has two mandates, one maximum employment and stable prices. And so like also by cutting rates, you also increase employment. And so I think that also looks good. So that's kind of why like when the whole jobs report fiasco came out and they like made revisions to the jobs report saying it was actually worse than expected, like that directly impacts how people are thinking about the economy. And so Trump also wants it to look like that people are still hiring, because when you have tariffs, like you actually stop hiring because you don't know what the next tariff is going to be. So like the unexpectedness of Trump's tariff in that job report showed that small businesses or businesses in general didn't know how to hire. And so as a result, they weren't filling new jobs. And so unemployment went up. And so as a result, like when you cut those rates, that switches. And so Trump wants that part. Then the second part, like you said, is like is making sure that the economy, it like booms under him. Mm-hmm. And then you risk all sorts of like inflationary risks. And so Powell has said multiple times, I'm waiting to see how tariffs affect inflation. Yeah. And Trump wants him to preempt that.
Yeah. And like they've been in a weird state because we don't know what's really going on with the tariffs. Like most of the tariffs right now are illegal, but they're also active mm-hmm. until mid-October, which is like when the appeal is happening. And so in that amount of time, there is time for Trump to go to the Supreme Court and like raise it to them. And basically with like the Fed models and the IMF projections of what the impact of tariffs is going to be, it's saying that it'll boost inflation by at least like a percentage point and raise unemployment. So that's just like the tariffs. That's what they think is going to happen. And so with the combination of all of that, it's heading towards stagflation, which is basically a time where there's high inflation combined with high unemployment. And then that just leads to stagnant economic growth. And so the Fed is in a tough spot because if they increase rates to combat inflation, then there's more unemployment. If they lower rates, then it supports employment but worsens inflation. So there's not really any good spot to be in. And we've had stagflation in the United States in like the 70s and 80s around the same time as in the UK, what was happening. And it was honestly kind of similar to this, where Nixon, who was the president at the time, was pressuring the chair, Arthur Burns, I think was his name, to lower rates for re-election, basically. And eventually he did lower rates. He agreed to it. But then ultimately it led to high inflation and the stagflation, which was like really devastating for the economy.
Yeah. Another example was during World War II, the Fed agreed to keep the rates low, specifically to help the government borrow more to then finance the war effort. And then also after that, inflation was like skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And so what happened is that Congress amended the act in 1951, which allowed the Fed to set interest rates independently for the first time. So I think before 1951, I couldn't figure this out, but there was like a process as to which like both parties would agree, and then after 1951 it was like, no, the Fed will always establish the interest rates independently. And so you could actually, like, if we were in the time of war and like Trump was like, oh, lower the rates so that we can finance the war, Powell could literally just say no.
Yeah, I mean, it's like never ended well. Basically,
Yeah.
like political leaders getting involved has never ended well when they're involved in monetary policy in any example.
Yeah, I feel like this is all just common sense.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy, like, how openly he's just strong-arming everyone.
Well, I feel like that is just the difference between a non-authoritarian leader and an authoritarian leader. Like, that's how authoritarianism comes about. It's like you have to weaken the institutions that check your power, because that's like the only way to expand your power, which is what authoritarians do.
Scary.
Yeah. I have confidence that the Supreme Court won't actually let this through because of what they said in the previous case.
It all becomes cyclical, though, because then it's like he has his own strategy to get a majority in the Supreme Court. Like, he's attacking like every institution at once, and so then it's all like a flywheel into each other.
So what would happen though if he was successful? We can get into that.
So Lisa's out, let's say, in this hypothetical scenario. Lisa's out. He gets to put 2 people. So he has 4-3. I mean, I think at that point, he probably just convinces them to cut rates and we see what happens, right?
Well, then he'd probably have to also, though, go after the regional bank leaders, right?
Yeah.
Which I feel like he would do with, like, local benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, we have seen instability in the Fed recently. Like, we talked about this a few episodes ago, but there was a double descent for the first time, and I forgot how many years it was, like 50 years or something like that. And you usually don't see that. Like, the Fed is usually very much on the same page. And even if they have internal conversations where they disagree with each other, they show a united front to the public. And so a double descent shows that there's like, it's
tension.
coming.
Yeah, it's also one of those things where, like, whenever Trump like takes over an institution, right, like he's like, oh, I'm gonna get like a ton of appointees onto like the Supreme Court that are loyalists, like onto the Fed board that are loyalists. There's like a second order question of like, are they actually gonna be loyalists?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people, like, for example, Supreme Court justices, like, train their entire life to like not be super partisan and like decide cases on the basis of like precedent. But it seems like his Fed board appointees have been pretty loyal.
Besides Powell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I also think that was kind of a different era.
yeah, I don't remember, but like when Powell was appointed, I don't think he had like as much power in the Senate as he does now. Because even like Lisa Cook was like tied in the Senate, and like Kamala was the breaking vote on her. And so I think that's like also part of why he hates her.
Yeah, honestly, it's just like being associated with the wrong people. Because even, who was it, like the BLS person?
Yeah.
It was literally just like him hating on Kamala.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kamala.
I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, it's like a developing story, so keep up on our TikTok.
Keep them on our TikTok. Cool. We can get into Open Evidence. So Open Evidence is a company launched actually from the Mayo Clinic Platform Accelerator Program.
Maya's obsessed with this company, guys.
I was literally, I mean, they're saving lives. Like, how could you not be obsessed with the company? Their most recent round was $210 million. At a valuation of $3.5 billion.
Yeah, and that was co-led by Google Ventures and Kleiner Perkins.
Yeah, and then I think Sequoia led their earlier round or something like that.
That's such a stacked cap table.
Wait, no,
their cap table is stacked.
Like Code 2, Thrive, Conviction.
It's like every single one.
Yeah, like, well, I want to be on their cap table.
Okay.
Oh, we didn't say yet. Would Open Evidence get our check?
Okay, so like basically the backstory here is that we always do if a company would get our check at the end, but Maya was so excited about Open Evidence that we had to move it to our second story. So there's a third story coming, but this is going to be our get the check segment.
Yeah, because Dude, they're actually saving lives. We can get into it. Essentially, they deliver like medical research and a decision support tool for physicians. And so they aggregate information from like a bunch of journals or clinical sources, and it's all peer reviewed material. So it's never like a blog post, for example, on the internet. And they like train their models. They don't really actually tell what their trade secrets are, but they make their own models. And it's just a consumer product. So it literally lives on a website, and you can go in there and like ask any question. I'm sure you could like consult it for your own like issues. Like, oh, I have this like little bump on my shoulder and I feel nauseating.
That would not be good for me.
I think they've been around since like early 2020s, like 2022. And since then, 40% of all physicians in the United States log into Open Evidence daily.
Yeah,
40%.
That is insane.
It's insane.
That's the fastest, like they are the fastest growing healthcare AI company.
Especially in a field that traditionally it takes so long
Yeah.
to adopt anything.
Yeah.
And there's like a reason for that, which they talk about, which is that usually in healthcare or health tech, there's like a very healthcare approach to growth where like you approach these people that are at the top of the food chain and like hospital systems and they're like administrators, and then you try to sell to them. They have like a lot of different people trying to sell to them, and it's probably pretty political too. Like you're going to conferences, you're doing like that whole like top down sales motion. And then what they did instead is they just like put this app on the app store for free and like had doctors start downloading it and thought of it as like a B2C app basically.
Yeah, it just like it kind of grew like wildfire is what they said. So the doctors would use it, and then like they would go pitch their hospitals to maybe get like a hospital-based subscription. But what a lot of people don't realize is like in the rural areas, like doctors are just like a 2-person practice. Like you might be the only oncologist for like a 100-mile radius, and like you don't specialize in any sort of specific type of cancer. You just like help anyone who has like cancer in that area. And so those people like they can't afford like SaaS subscriptions or anything like that. And so, but they're also the decision makers too. And so by building a consumer product, like they're not only able to like penetrate, let's say like the bigger hospital chains of the world, but they also penetrate like the small businesses of the world, because like your doctor friend is like, hey, like I just used this tool and it like solved a case or whatever. And like the founder goes in to talk about like where it's really been useful, and he basically says it's like all edge cases. So for example, like let's say you have like this like skin patch, and then you also have like some neurological disease and you're taking XYZ medication for that. It's like a dermatologist doesn't know how to consult on your case because they don't know if they're going to like fuck up your like brain disease or something. And so as a result, they need to do a bunch of medical research and figure out like what right balance of medication. And it was like, it actually took me back to like Grey's Anatomy when I was like watching it. Because there was these episodes where they would like send interns on like days long like tasks to just go read as much shit as possible to figure out how to solve a case.
Yeah.
And so like,
yeah, because doctors are so specialized in like
Yeah.
one certain thing, and so you don't know how it's going to affect all of these other things, and now you have something that does.
yeah.
Well, also like I didn't realize how much like medical research grows with time. Like they're talking about how it basically doubles every 5 years, just the amount of like, and that's looking at like top publications, not like anything that's put out. So it's like you actually have to keep up, and doctors are constantly falling behind. And
well, the stat I saw was it doubles every 73 days.
Apparently that stat is like kind of wrong, but
yeah, based on the founder said on the podcast that it like that they went with a more conservative approach of things that would actually be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
They like
it's
requalify.
But it's like studies
insane.
conclude
Yeah.
different things, but like everyone agrees that it's like growing really, I guess, somewhere between doubling every 73 days and 5 years, which is a big range. But the point is like within a doctor's own career, like
you're always out of date.
They're out of date. And it also makes sense why AI is a really good use case for this, because like what AI is really good at is like reading every paper out there and then being able to synthesize the information. It also drives traffic to these journals, like for example the New England Journal of Medicine or like the American Medical Association's journals, because it is like citing these actual journals, like, oh, on this page like XYZ.
Yeah, which is like the biggest concern with AI. Even when we use it, the biggest concern is that it's going to give me wrong information or like made up information. And when it comes to the medical field, you have to be 100% right all the time. Like there's no room for error. You can't have hallucinations. You can't have any of that. And so by being trained on this like really high quality data, it makes it so that it's actually usable.
Yeah, and they basically don't train on public data like on Reddit and on blogs. So there's not even a component of like having to
opinion
worry
or
about
like
those
yeah
things.
Yeah. And the founder said that like in 2022, so they actually published a paper prior to like building the product, which is are like large language models better than smaller like specialized domain models? And the answer is no. Like the specialized domain models can be a lot better in their specific tasks. And this is in 2022 when like we don't really know much about LLMs. Like you can think back to that and like, you're probably getting your first look at GPT-3 that was like slightly useful, but not really. It was just like fun to play with. And he talks about like they were one of the first like papers to really explore this idea and then go and implement it, which is kind of why they've been ahead of the curve. They only use data from the US government in the form of like FDA and CDC data. And so it was just like basically super tailored to that and then like expanded it over time as they signed more like contracts with different journals and stuff like that. And this was really interesting because many people had tried to go to all those journals and get that access to that data, and the journals would say no. And the reason why they got access is because the people working there started using open evidence and liked them.
yeah and they were like, we want to make this better. Yeah. They recently also scored 100% on the US medical licensing exam, and it's the first AI to ever do that. And like to your point, they had to establish proof of concept first. And then they said they did like a 6-month period where their goal was to make it get 100% on this, and they were able to achieve it. So it just proves their research paper that they had from like 3 years ago that you can just train it on this very specific data and achieve like really good outcomes.
Yeah. And the other thing he said was that they were the first to implement references. So this was also in GPT-3, like there was no links to like
sources
and stuff like that. Perplexity came about and started doing it, but he says he was pre that.
Yeah.
And that like
He's
established
just a little trailblazer.
Yeah. It was actually kind of interesting because I was like, wow, this company that we like know nothing about or like never really been in like major mainstream media news ever. Like I actually went around and
heard about them, like,
but that's because you're in health tech.
Yeah. Because I polled all my friends and like no one said like
I've never heard of it before.
Like no one had ever heard of it before.
Yeah.
And it was like and like when you say 40% of physicians are using it, everyone's like, how have we not?
We also don't have any doctor. Like we don't.
Yeah, that's true.
We're not in those circles of people. Like we don't have any friends that are doctors.
Yeah.
We don't have friends that were down to go to school for a singular additional year.
We don't.
Besides like one.
Yeah. Yeah. But another part of the story is also the physicians shortage. The seats for medical schools isn't rising, and the seats for residencies is also not rising.
Yeah, thanks to the government.
Thanks to the government, yeah, which is the Balanced Budget Act of 1997, which freezes Medicare funding for graduate medical education and it caps the number of residency slots at 1996 levels.
Isn't it like the AMA doesn't want like more seats because then it gets like less competitive for current doctors have like less labor power?
I don't know. There's some reason, but now it's like everyone's going to find ways around it. We also need physicians. So it's like people are going overseas, like outside of the US to get medical degrees and then come back to the US.
But then they literally have friends doing that.
But then they don't increase the number of residency slots.
Yeah.
There are 0.82 residency positions per applicant. So you like essentially have like, I think it's like 2,000 to 3,000 kids a year that don't get placed. I might have to fact check that stat. And then those people just like reapply the next year. And like, so then it just gets harder and harder every year.
There's also like a second order issue where once people are already physicians, the distribution of where physicians are down to work in the country is very concentrated.
Yeah.
So they have like all these incentive programs to try to get physicians into rural areas.
Yeah.
And they somewhat work. I'm pretty sure like some of our H-1B allocation, if I remember correctly, goes towards just trying to get physicians into these rural areas because like people trying to immigrate here are like desperate enough to like work in the middle of nowhere versus like actual American doctors are not as down.
Yeah.
And
like you get paid way less in a city. I think it's like I think your salary is cut in half if you work in a city compared to a rural area.
Just to like even the distribution.
Yeah. But yeah, zooming out, like Annika was saying, was like every healthcare AI company right now is like kind of going towards this like bottoms up or top down approach. And my hypothesis is that like bottom up is the way to go. We just covered the Gen AI divide story last week. And I was talking about how all of these different enterprise SaaS AI companies aren't really providing too much value. Like agentic AI is not really working as it should, because in order to get value, you need really highly tailored specific workflow systems for the way you're doing things. I mean, each hospital has their own like super specific workflow. For every dollar a hospital makes, 25% of that money is spent on administration costs to even get that money. And so there's a lot of just archaic workflows that have to be disrupted, and you're not going to see that disrupted overnight. So if you really want like a weed growing type of company, it makes sense why they're succeeding the way they are. In that Gen AI divide report, we saw that like a bunch of workers were just using their personal GPT subscription to go and be more efficient. And in a similar way, like that is what Open Evidence did here, was that they're the personal healthcare GPT for all these physicians, and people really, really like it. And it's the thing that's providing them the most value. So it like, I don't know, it came full circle when I was reading this story. I was like, wow, it's like just literally being applied to a different space. But yeah.
Yeah. And it's HIPAA compliant.
It is HIPAA
because
compliant.
I'm sure so much of our patient data is just like in ChatGPT somewhere. Like I'm sure people are pasting it in there.
For sure. And
I saw this stat for Open Evidence that it was said by the end of the year, I think 100 million Americans would be treated using Open Evidence, which is insane. That's like a third of the population.
Yeah.
For ChatGPT, it's 100%.
And then the last thing I was going to say is that OpenAI seems that they want to get a bite of this pie because they've been like hiring a bunch of people for their healthcare division and making very public hires. And so I wonder how they're going to go about this. Like, I wonder if they'll copy the playbook or do something different. But
I do feel like OpenAI could like one shot this idea.
Could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, if you use their like deep research tool, it is basically this. It's just that it also has the public internet.
Yeah,
like,
you need to scope it down.
There's two barriers of entry. One, that uses like the public internet, but I'm sure it's like not that hard to like only have certain data get used. And then two, they don't have like the pre-existing relationships, but
they're OpenAI.
Yeah, they'll figure that out.
Yeah. Well, and then the last point I wanted to make was that like we covered Hippocratic AI in a previous episode, and Hippocratic AI is basically like a company that has different like AI personas that can act like nurses or doctors over the phone and do like checkups after you've like had a surgery. So like, hey, how are you feeling? And then they'll triage it to a doctor. But then a bunch of like hospitals are kind of banning the use of like AI doctors ish. And so I actually don't know if Hippocratic AI is like facing any like backlash.
I don't think so, because the entire thing with Hippocratic AI was they were like, we never will give a diagnosis, and they're not actually trying to create like nurse AIs. They're more trying to create like,
it's like the admin work, right?
Yeah, like the person that checks you in at the desk.
Okay.
Like an AI version of that. But they have also, and my understanding of Hippocratic AI is like they've trained on a ton of like healthcare data. Like they don't say how they've gotten it, but I'm sure they have like deals with certain like healthcare companies, like maybe like something like Aura. Like I'm literally making that up, but I don't know who has given them the data, but like they clearly have
Someone's
it.
given them the data.
And so they have trained on things that like I don't think Open Evidence has trained on, like people's actual healthcare data. And so like at some point I feel like there will be some type of a partnership between like Hippocratic AI and Open Evidence, or like some form of integration, because they're not, the way I see it is they're not direct competitors. You want like Hippocratic AI. So like there's a $7 trillion healthcare market in the US. $2 trillion of that is all administrative costs, which is things like scheduling, follow-ups. Like those patients, a lot of times they're old. They don't know how to get to the hospital. They're having a really long conversation with you on the phone about like how they hate their life. And like they want that to all be done by an AI. And then Open Evidence is like kind of giving like physicians the assist.
Yeah.
So,
but my point is that like I don't know exactly, I mean it varies hospital to hospital and state to state, but there is regulation preventing like the use of interaction of patients and AI.
that makes sense. So that like could affect them, but like it like Hippocratic AI also is like growing really fast, and I feel like hospitals, as they like, it's the same thing. There's like an admin shortage too, and like they'll probably be put in a situation where they need to, like some hospitals will ban it, some will rely on it, and then over time, like
I think my main point was that like Hippocratic AI has like a different fight or battle because they're going to be fighting a larger battle around regulation.
I think Hippocratic AI doesn't necessarily have a human in the loop, and that's like the key difference.
Versus like the tool of Open Evidence. Open Evidence is like just like a tool based. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. Yeah.
So basically, they would get our check.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
Okay, cool. SpaceX. Shall we get into it?
Yes, our final story. Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah, so our final story is about SpaceX. They had 2 big missions in the last week. Like Maya mentioned earlier, the first one was the Starship Flight 10, which was on August 26th. They launched their 10th integrated Super Heavy and Starship rocket test flight. And it was actually like a pretty big deal. We'll get into it, but it was the first time that there's 2 parts of the spaceship, and it was the first time that both of them successfully landed in the designated like splash zones in the ocean, which was huge for them. And then the other one was on August 31st. It was the Starlink 17-7 mission. SpaceX launched 24 Starlink V2 mini satellites into orbit. So this was a lot more routine. It was the 9th launch in August alone, which is pretty crazy. We can start with the Starship Flight 10. And I think the entire concept is actually really interesting because the goal of the Starship is ultimately to enable human settlement on Mars. It's part of this like Mars colonization program. And so that is like very cool and very out there of what we're trying to get. But the more immediate short-term goal is that we want to have a reusable rocket, which is actually something we talked about months ago when we did our SpaceX episode. But rocket reusability would be huge for all of us.
For like costs and resources.
Yeah.
And it was like Elon's always said it was possible, and then like a lot of other people would like say it's not possible.
Classic.
And he did it. So
yeah.
Yeah, and Elon's timeline for wanting to land on Mars is by 2027. And that's not to have like humans live there, but just to land there for the first time. Obviously, his timelines are not very historically trustworthy, so we'll see. But it is interesting. I've been seeing the media cover like what Mars colonization looks like more like in the last like month. And basically, Elon says that the reason he wants to colonize Mars is to diversify, like literally the way you diversify a portfolio. Like if something happens to Earth,
I mean, honestly, makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, no one thinks that doesn't make sense. The reason Bezos says he wants to colonize Mars is to basically have like some of the toxic things that we do on Earth on Mars instead. Like, I don't know if you have like a super toxic factory or something.
Yeah.
But then I was like looking into how it would actually work for us to colonize Mars, and it's like pretty deep. Like basically it takes like 6 to 9 months to even get there. And
what? Really?
Yes. And like while you're on the rocket ship, you basically lose like muscle mass, you lose like bone density, like you might even lose your eyesight. Like there's a ton of physical things that happen to you that obviously we haven't studied really well, but like we know there would be like severe risks. And right now, like astronauts that go up are obviously, we do the most amount of due diligence on their health and everything like that, and they still have like weird things happen to them. So first you have to get there. That takes like 6 to 9 months. And then basically humans actually cannot survive on the surface of Mars. So we'd have to build underground bunkers in Mars and have like a colony of like 12 people like living underground in Mars. And yeah, you couldn't go to the surface. There would be water. You also can't call Earth because like I guess the way it works is there's like a huge like time delay. So like they were studying like mental health wise how we could even get people on Mars, because they're like, yeah, like you're not going to be able to like call your significant other or like anything like that.
I have a crazy plug. What? Okay, so basically there's I got down a really deep rabbit hole like 4 years ago, and there's this podcast called The Habitat, and it was a study. Okay, let me back up. There was a study done where they would put 6 people in a bubble in Hawaii, like in the Red Rocks area of like, I think the Big Island. And you can only stay in that bubble, and it's to study how like humans would interact with each other and like would they survive the flight to Mars. And so the podcast is on like one of those like 6-month expeditions of just like crazy. Staying in there. And like they study like the human interactions of like the 6 people. It was one of the most interesting podcasts I've ever listened to, because you like get to hear them go crazy.
Wait, you know, I was talking to my friend about this the other day, and I was like, do you think astronauts just start like hooking up with each other on the rocket ship?
No, wait, so that's like part of the podcast.
Because I was literally asking him this like a week ago, because I was like, I feel like they must.
Yeah.
And then
oh my god. Yeah, so basically they pick people who would like make up the representation of like what an astronaut would be. So these are all failed astronauts, or like people who like wanted to be an astronaut
but
then,
didn't
like,
become astronauts.
Yeah, like, or like didn't like pass like one of the marks or something like that. And in one of them, like the podcaster who like listens to like the video diaries of these people, she's like, I'm pretty sure these two people like each other, and she's like, and she like studies them over these 6 months, and she thinks that like the only reason that they were happier is because they had each other.
Oh my god, that's cute.
And it was like
An
really
astronaut
cute.
romance.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think they like
sense. Like if you meet someone and you're like in the honeymoon stage, like
Yeah.
that
It's also just like who's around you. I feel like it's like the coworker theory. Like, you know how like everyone's like your coworkers are way hotter, but it's not because they're actually way hotter. It's just because they're right next to you.
Do people say that?
Wait, yeah.
Oh.
that's why so many people just like cheat on their significant others with like less hotter individuals that they work with.
Or that are coworkers.
Wait, what was the last thing I was gonna say about Mars?
How about them hooking up on Mars?
Oh, no, not hooking up on Mars. Basically, there's a whole nother layer to this about like international policy once we get to colonizing Mars, which is, it's actually like pretty intense because like even like all of the stuff about like satellites, like who owns space, like at this point Starlink, which like we're going to talk about, has put a ton of satellites up into space, and there's like, I don't know, like the US and China are probably going to fight over space at some point,
I'm sure.
and with Mars, like basically what everyone's agreed on is like no one can own Mars as and make it part of their sovereign nation.
Yeah.
But you can go there, and if you like occupy an area, it is yours. So like we can go and occupy it, and it's basically like an extension of the US, but we just like can't officially call it that. It's like a whole thing. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But
no one's even close other than SpaceX, are they?
yeah. They're not.
I put the bet
Never know
on
what
us.
China has up their sleeve. They'll have their deep seek moment when they land on Mars and not in like some shitty rocket ship.
Space is so cool, actually. I used to be obsessed
Wait,
with
so
space when I
would
was
you
little.
guys ever like do a space tourism moment?
No.
Have you met me? Like, I can't even
Yeah.
go on a plane.
Yeah, that's
She can't like
true.
jump off a cliff into the water.
Yeah, like I will
Yeah.
not do anything except on solid ground. Okay.
Honestly, me too these days.
Yeah.
But
Risk averse.
Our risky days are behind us.
They are.
back to Flight 10. So the objective was to recover the booster and the upper stage, which is the first time both were recovered in the same flight. One splashed down on the Gulf of Mexico and one splashed down in the Indian Ocean. Another part of it was that they had this like Pez dispenser. Sorry. It's actually kind of cool. But they had this Pez dispenser that shoots out like Starlink satellites.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and so Starlink is part of SpaceX, which provides like satellite coverage and internet for like people on Earth, and the
Slowly people on Earth.
for the people on Earth. And so version 3 of Starlink needs like heavier, larger satellites, and it's going to provide like 4K streaming. And so right now it's like cost inefficient to like place these satellites, and so what they were trying out is this like new Pez dispensing machine. So literally in the video you just see like
Satellites
this like
being shot out.
yeah, like satellites being shot at. So like
Dummy
the
satellites.
yeah, and like the door like opens like slightly, and then it's like pew pew pew, and it's like it's so cool to watch. It happens within a minute, and they were
That
able
is
to
really
do 8
cool.
of them.
Yeah.
And so in the full capacity, like these like flights would have like 60 of them. I think it's like 3x up from what they can do now, which is like place 20 satellites at once. So it'd be a lot more cost effective, which is just like returns to their Starlink business, which their Starlink business is supposed to be profitable, I think, this year. And that helps SpaceX, then build more of these rockets to then go to Mars. So it's all like a self-fulfilling cycle.
Yeah. And the last technical breakthrough, apart from those two, was that they tested out these new like heat shield tiles that they had on the outside. And for a little like backstory on how we even got to like flight 10, like there were flights 1 through 9 as well. Flights 1 through 5 were just like epic fails. Like they all like resulted in vehicle loss. It basically like didn't do anything. 7 was the famous one with like the chopstick arms, where part of it got caught, but then the other part I think exploded. And then 8 and 9, I don't remember exactly what it was, but like either some part shut down, got destroyed, whatever it might be. So this was like the first successful one. But one of the key things that was happening in these earlier flights was that on re-entry into Earth, like the heat tiles were just like popping off. And the entire goal is like rocket reusability. And so you can't have these tiles be popping off. And so they put these new heat tiles on, and they were able to withstand the heat of re-entry. And so there were like some little issues with it, but they were like largely intact. And so this was the first thing that really proved, it was their proof of concept of this can work, and we have almost all the components that we need for this to be like fully functioning, which is pretty cool.
Go Elon. We can get into Starlink's 17-7 mission, which is basically on August 31st, they launched Falcon 9 rocket carrying 24 Starlink V2 mini satellites, and it's the 9th Starlink launch of August alone, which is kind of crazy.
I know.
9
it's just
in
like
1
a
month.
routine mission now.
Yeah, and just a quick overview, Starlink serves about 7 million active users globally. That is up from 3 million since mid-2024, which I think is like when we covered them. Right?
Yeah.
They basically doubled since the last time we talked about them.
That makes sense. I mean, they're bringing internet connection to like remote areas in Africa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And my flights.
Yet still not the podcast room.
That's so true. But also like the benefits of it in like the rural areas is actually like super impressive, because like we need connectivity to these areas. It's also even like farming. I saw that it's like really helping farmers and like farm tech out, I guess. And so yeah, it's like vital for like agriculture, mining, things like that, where you traditionally don't have like strong signal.
I mean, now you can have like a doctor in a remote area in Africa use Starlink to access open evidence.
Yeah.
And
I think just a quick overview of the Starlink business model. They had, last time we talked about them, they had 3 million subscribers. They're up at 7 million. So they are closer to like 10 to 12 billion in revenue. And so that probably means they're profitable. Again, they're a private company, so we have no idea. But yeah, they are growing and they're rapidly expanding. And I think by 2026 is when they are going to have the Gen 3 satellites, which deliver over 1 terabyte per second. Wow. And they're going to support high demand applications like 4K streaming and real time cloud computing. So my guess is like they're going to literally go after internet providers today.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they will. Yeah, they like beat their own trajectory, like their own projected revenue numbers. They beat them, which is like, it's an Elon company. So the fact that they're beating their own projected revenue is like really impressive. Yeah. And yeah, they're supposed to get to like 12 billion by the end of the year. And this is great for Elon because all of that money is just going to fund Starship. That way, like, he doesn't need to like raise external money from anyone, because like they basically have no paying customers besides their like one contract with NASA.
Every time we covered Elon company, I'm like, the way his mind works,
it's insane. Yeah. And so Starlink is bankrolling the Mars mission, which is like what he really wants to do, which is crazy. And Starlink is a really like sticky business because obviously, like we just talked about, it's like giving all of these people access in remote areas. It's a subscription based business. And I saw this thing online where it was basically like Starlink is to SpaceX what AWS was to Amazon, which I thought was so interesting. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's like it's giving them this like stable cash flow to do whatever they want. Which is crazy.
Cool. Anyways, it's been a fun episode with you guys today.
Yeah, we really liked the stories this week.
Yeah. Well, because we didn't have to talk about, I feel like, well,
you think it's AI?
I don't know if it's AI or what it is. I feel like it's just like
I think
refreshing
it's more
stuff.
fun to cover stories that like clearly, it's like clear how it affects people.
Yeah. And it's like things that you don't hear about all day. Like I feel like the AI saturation is just really high.
Or like I don't like to, or maybe stuff outside of mainstream media is fun too.
It's because
we were outside of Balboa and we met a pod listener and he was like, oh, like I like the pod, and he was like, usually like I see you guys talking about Anthropic and now you're here. Like, that's so funny that like in people's heads it's like we're like thinking about Anthropic. I don't know how to put it.
Wait, didn't he mean to say like, oh, like I feel like I always see your faces associated to this thing, but now I'm associating you to this club meeting?
Like,
this club.
I guess like it's just like, oh, it's like funny to like, it's like if you see like a journalist in the club, you're like, oh, or like your teacher.
Your teacher in the club is a good one.
Like, what are you doing?
Is that what people think of us?
Well, we do just like make educational tech content,
but we're also at the club every weekend. So if you guys want to come to the club with us,
find us at a Balboa.
Balboa is not the club, but
we're not at the club. There aren't even clubs in SF, but we're at the bar.
We're at the bars.
So like it's a recent thing. Like we've been on a recent wave of going out.
I think it's summer.
It's summer, but what's even crazier is like you guys always get recognized and I never get.
Okay, Maya.
It's because we're together. First of all, like I don't get recognized when I'm by myself by anyone.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I don't think I do either.
Or if I do, it's like someone that is like a friend of a friend. Like it's like they would somehow know me anyways, and they'll like bring it up.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Anyway, meet and greet at Balboa this Friday. Be there. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.